thank everyone that signed up and registered in this beautiful and full of information webinar that we're going to have today with Esther Velilla, as we have been announcing in our social media. Today we're going to be talking about donors, the legislative aspects between Spain and the U.S. So first of all, I want to welcome Esther. And before we jump into our questions, into the topics of the subject, I want to tell all of you who Esther is. Well, you guys know that I have been doing partnership with Fertty, and we did some webinar in the past with Arena. But Esther is the head of Fertty International, and for me it's really an honor because she's an incredible entrepreneur. She is embryologist, and she deals with this beautiful thing that is genetics. She has more than 50 years of experience in assisted reproduction and reproductive genetics, a master in cell biology, PhD in genetics and cell biology from the U.A.B., a master's in executive education from U.S.A, senior clinical embryology certified by the ESHRE and ASEBIR, specialized in pre-implantation genetic diagnosis here in the U.S.A. But the most amazing thing is that Esther is the CEO of Fertty International, a clinic in Barcelona that is specialized in reproductive assisted methods to women and couples, not only in Spain, but all over the world, so they can reach this dream of parenthood. And as you know, I myself went through 5 cycles of IVF, so we have this incredible connection with Esther. And she also has a story with, besides being the CEO of the clinic and embryologist herself, she, is a mom through IVF too. So we later get into that. Esther, welcome. And before we jump into our questions, I definitely want you to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your story so people know who you are.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you for this long introduction.
No, they need to know who you are.
Monica is right. I started as an embryologist in the lab 15 years ago. Then I complete my training in genetics. I moved from the lab to New York to work at San Barnabas Medical Center for genetics. And I was in charge, I was doing pre-implantation genetic diagnosis here. And then life made me come back to Spain. I had my family there, and we started the project of the fertility clinic. So yes, you're right. I start from embryology, and now I'm managing an IVF clinic in Spain. And we are working mostly for 100% of our patients are from abroad, not from Spain. We are having patients from different countries. U.S.A. is one of those. But we also treat patients from Canada, from Australia, England, Italy, Middle East, a lot of countries. It's quite special to have that, yeah. A lot of cultures together.
Yes, and that's beautiful because today, is kind of very expensive in our own countries to do treatments. And when you look at the numbers, sometimes it's like, wow, it's cheaper even with the tickets and all of that, going abroad and do it. And basically, we're going to touch that point today, but our main subject is we're going to talk today about donors and what is the difference between the laws in Spain, Barcelona, and here in the United States. So I'm going to jump with the first question, which is, I think is the one that can open this subject. And is what is the main difference, Esther, between USA legal system and Spain legal system when it comes to egg donation and the concerns that can come up with that?
Yeah. So let me explain first a little bit about how we regulate in Spain. Mm-hmm. In Spain, we have a very permissive law comparing the laws that they have for assisted reproductive technique in other countries. Mm-hmm. We can perform most of the treatments, but we cannot perform sex selection or gender selection, neither surrogacy. But other kind of treatments we can perform. And egg donation is one of the main targets in Spain because the egg donation here that we have are anonymous. And also the population in general in Spain tends a lot to donate. We are on the top 4 countries on the list of organ donation. So I'm telling you that as a concept of the concept of donate. That
Yes.
one of the main difference between Spain and USA, the main difference is that, well, there are a lot of them, but one of those is in Spain, the egg donation is completely anonymous.
Okay, yes.
And altruistic. I mean, we cannot pay the donors, and we only can compensate the medical medical expenses that
for the donor.
The day that they have to take out of work for going to the clinic for doing the test, but only that, the compensation. In United States, there is no limit of compensation. Most of the clinics follow the American Society of Reproductive Medicine guidelines that says that they can compensate the donor from $5,000 to $10,000 US for the donation. But there are some clinics that pay more than that. There are clinics that can pay $25,000 US for the donor part.
Yes.
And that makes all prices huge.
Totally.
Apart from that, there is another different point, is that in Spain, the donors, the ones that are responsible for this procedure are the clinics, the IVF clinics. Okay. So we are the ones that promote the donation. We are the ones that do the selection of the donor, do all the lab tests and all the security controls in order to this donation be performed in a secure way. In USA, this procedure can be done for fertility clinics or a third partner agency. Most of the centers work with a third partner agency. That means that there is an external company, private one, that only select the donor, do the test, and send the donors to the IVF center. That means that this agency also will charge some part of the treatment. So when you have to calculate the numbers here in the IVF in the United States, you have to calculate the cost of the third partner agency, the cost of the donor, the compensation of the donor, and also the cost of the IVF and the cost of the medication. So if you put that all together, you can imagine that the difference in price between Spain and USA are completely huge.
Yes.
In terms of quality, I could say that there is a lot of difference in terms of countries. For example, in Spain, we work under European regulation. There are a lot of European directives and national directives made by the government that regulates, first one, the procedure, first one, the publicity of the donors. We cannot do any publicity that show numbers, show compensation, and show faces of the donor.
Yes, that's why it's anonymous in general. That's very secure. I like that point.
Like, for example, you want to donate, I will pay you 1,000 euros. No.
Yes.
The compensation cannot be published. And also, we have to put on the publicity the risk of the medical treatment. Okay. That's very important. I mean, we have to be very strict about that.
Okay.
Also, we have rules in terms of procedure of the egg donors, selection of the donors. All is completely, and the traceability of the egg donors. All is completely regulated by law, and the for that every single year. Okay. So that means that all of the centers has to follow the same rules. We have tracking of all in the IVF. For example, all media, all disposables, and all stuff that touched one of the eggs from the donor or the sperm has to be recorded, and this has to be recorded from the beginning to the end. So in some terms, if something happened, we can have completely traceability going back and find out what has happened. That in United States, there is no anyone department that regulates and inspects the centers in general for the IVF. The only government status that can do inspections to the centers are the FDA, the federal. Yes. the FDA regulates the safety or infection. So one of the roles that they have is to be sure that with tissues and cells, if you transfer these tissues and cells from one donor to one recipient, you are not getting an infection. So that's the main role of the FDA. But the FDA doesn't take into account about how you do that work.
Yes, there is no traceability, like you said.
No. So
it makes sense.
They can audit the centers, and they really do that, but they are only focused about the infection, about the compliance of the donor. If you do the serologies and all the lab tests, that's it. So there's a lack of regulation in some aspects for the IVF center. What is true is that in the United States, most of the IVF labs follow some directive or guidelines that the American Society of Reproductive Medicine or the Society for Reproductive Technology, SART, has published. These two societies plus the CDC Society are the ones that are publishing guidelines. But these guidelines are recommended, are not mandatory for the center. In our case, all the directives are mandatory. We have, and if we are not inspected and licensed, we cannot do the procedure. Here in the United States, if you don't follow these rules, you can.
You still can go on with the procedure, exactly. Yes, well, talking about that actually is something that a lot of American, couples and American women that want to do their procedure overseas, they kind of get worried, right? Especially one of the main things that they get worried is that, as you mentioned in the beginning, here, they have access through the third party, like of an album of pictures of physically to see how the donor is going to look, because there is this mindset that, okay, I want the kid with these blue eyes, whatever, so they go and they see the donor and the pictures, and this could be one of the worries of American couples and women when, for example, they say, okay, let me make numbers and I'm going to go and decide, let's go and do the donor in Spain. But you mentioned it's anonymous, so that is kind of a worry from the American couples. So one thing that I will, if I may, I want to give as a tip that this, instead of see it as a contra, like a con, it's a really, really positive thing that you guys are so strictly regulated, because in the end of the process, basically all is guaranteed. You have a traceable thing, and the fact that you guys are anonymous doesn't mean that you are not following the genetic part of finding a donor that has genetic similarities of the one that is going to be the receptor. I am correct, Esther?
Yeah. Let me explain for the people that are listening to us. Let me explain how we do it. Yes. But you're true. The egg donation is completely anonymous in Spain, but we have to be. We have to follow some rules.
Yes.
The person that is responsible for the matching, I mean, to look for the twin sister for the recipient, is the doctor. The doctor is the responsible for that, and the matching has to be based on anything, physical characteristics.
Yes.
There's a color of eyes, color of skin, color of hair,
yes,
and the immunological characteristics. So following that, what we are looking is for the best matching for the donor. I mean that, for example, if I have, I don't know, a Chinese girl that come to us that is looking for Caucasian eggs, I cannot do that, right? Because I cannot matching, because it will be different. So that is one of the main things that we have to take into account. We have to look for the best profile that looks like better with the recipient.
Yes, exactly. And this, for me, this is one of the tips I will say to any American couple or women that want to look abroad is an advantage. Instead of seeing it a disadvantage, it's an advantage. A simple example, and like that clear can explain something. How many people in the world, they are in online date sites? It's something like very simple like that. You go, you find, you put always, you're gonna put your best picture, your best, and there is a lot of photoshopping. The same could happen here when you see, and it has been cases, in places in the world that they go through, egg donor or even a sperm donor, any donor. They look to this picture, they find out, and then suddenly has nothing, the baby comes out, has nothing to do with what they found out. Then there is this fear of rejection of the baby because is one thing is what I saw, and then look what it came out. And on the other hand, with the regulation of the rules in Spain, you basically are guaranteeing that physical things and immunological things are almost matching with the recipient. I love that idea of the fact that, as you said, a Chinese or an Asian or Middle Eastern is going to come and want a Caucasian. You cannot do it. So you are warranting that. And I think this is a great, great advantage when it comes to that. Also, if we want to mention, tell me.
But you tell me, this is one of the most common questions that we get when we are treating some couples, that it's why you cannot choose, because they are thinking about a model. They want to know something about the history of the donor, the religions of the donor, sometimes the background, family background. We can give some information about some specific things, hobbies, for example, but we cannot show pictures, we cannot disclose any name or anything about that. But you have to consider that anonymity is a word that we will take it under our hands. I mean, we are responsible to keep it anonymous. What let me say, based on what we can do as a center. That means that I will take the DNA of the donor. I will keep the DNA 30 years, for a long time, just for if something's happened, we can have tracking. And the clinical story of the donors, I will also keep it for a lot of years. But for example, if then the donor goes out and give the DNA to a genetic data for another reason, you know that actually the genetics can give you who you are.
Yes.
So we have to be very careful that if you are going through an IVF procedures with an anonymity, and you want to be anonymous, then you have to be aware of not releasing your DNA for any other thing.
Yes. And this is
genetic can match the data, and the anonymity is no longer anonymous.
Yes, completely understand. And as you say, it's one of the main worries of Americans because the system here is different. And, when you are in a system that you are continuously used to, that's what it is. But again, I think that the fact that, like you said, anonymity is just the concept. But in the end, you were very clear in what you just said. You guarantee the receptor of that donor that is going to have at least the almost twin similar characteristics. Plus, another advantage that you mentioned is this donor is basically commit to your clinic. Is not going to go to other clinics, and donate anymore. Like here in the States, they can do that because of what you just said in the beginning. The third-part agency that handled that. They receive donors from everywhere and the compensation.
Yeah, mainly in Spain, what we have is a national registry. It's because it's relative. We have a national register that every time that a potential egg donor is looking for donate to be an egg donor, we enter the data into the system, and the system is completely national. So all the clinics are putting all the data into the system. So we will be able to know if that donor has been has done any other donation at another center. We can know how many babies they had from other donations. We can know about if there is any adverse or abnormal effect with the donation. There's a lot of information, and that's very, very important, because if not, imagine that, for example, we have a baby born with a genetic diseases that came from the donor, and we haven't tested that donor for that genetic disease, and we see it. So we can prevent that of this donor going to another center, another IVF center. If we don't put that data into a system that it's national system, this donor can do after that another IVF procedure. And if the donor doesn't say that she has done a procedure in another IVF, the new center will be won't be able to
know. Yes, and that is the thing.
Control. Yes, and it's very important when an egg donation cycle. We do an egg donation cycle. It's very important to have this complete control of all the procedure here.
Which is that's the other advantage that I wanted to mention, is the clinic, the one that has the control of the whole procedure, and there is no third parties like it is in here. And that basically right there, also the costs are way less than here, which is what, now I'm going to the next question. There was what the recipients, may and may not know, which you already said, basically on the anonymous part, what they know here and that. How are Spanish egg donors?
Mainly, in Barcelona, for example, that is the city that we have the clinic, and most of the donors that we have are from Barcelona or living in Barcelona. Yes. Barcelona is a very cosmopolitan city. We have a high number of young population that came from a lot of countries, most of them students or workers in early ages, and they come just for experience 1 year or 2 years in Barcelona, so we can have a wide variety of ethnicities there, candidates for egg donation. Most of them are young girls from 18 to 34 years old.
Oh, so they are in their young age.
The law says that has to be lower than 35, but our middle average age from the egg donor is 22, 23. We don't like to choose donors older than that. Our average
23. Okay. Also, you even also have an age margin on that.
Yeah, we have a legal margin on that, but we had our own rules in the clinic. Yes. So I like donors. I prefer to accept donors between 20, 23 years old, more or less.
Yes, and you as an embryologist know better, like you have your, it's a regulation in the country and it's a regulation nationally, but yes, in that you are free to have your own margin of age.
The egg donors can have a maximum of 6 IVF cycles, maximum.
Okay.
And also there's another important issue here in Spain is that we cannot accept donors that has more than 6 babies born in Spain.
Oh. And that's in the national record that you mentioned, that right? You have access to know that.
Yeah, and every country has its own numbers, and they do the numbers in a different way. There are countries that the maximum number of babies born is 10, 20, 6. In our case, they come out with this number, 6 babies born in Spain.
No more than that.
No more than that, or 6 consecutive IVF cycles, maximum.
One of the two, 6 babies or 6, okay. So it's one or the other one. Now, how is the selection procedure, in detail? Because, when a recipient goes, they want independently now, okay, so I'm over, I know that the clinic is taking care of all the procedure, I don't need to worry about having a third part and jump into the clinic, the clinic is doing everything. But now, how is that selection procedure, Esther?
The selection procedure is the one you are performing here in the United States. First of all, we do an cytology of the donor, a gynecology exploration of the donor. Also, we do a complete physical exam. We do infectious disease tests, a lot of lab tests for HIV, hepatitis B, C, whatever, a lot of infectious disease tests, a complete one. We do a psychological examination as well.
Of the donor?
Of the donor, absolutely.
Wow.
Because absolutely. And also in United States, you already do the same because it's very important to avoid if we detect some mental disorders, we're gonna
Yes.
send a donor for the donation. And also we do a complete panel of genetic diseases. We
Wow.
test that more than 500 recessive genetic diseases for the donor. So in case that the donor is carrier for genetic diseases, that means that it's carrier but it's not affected.
Mm-hmm.
We can have the matching with the male, the male part of the recipient,
Mm-hmm.
in order to avoid the risk of having a baby born with a genetic
Any genetical disease.
disease.
Wow.
And we test more than 500 genetic recessive diseases.
So you test on more than 500 for that donor specifically in each of them. Wow, that's so. I go to the next question, which is how can you reduce the risk of a genetic disease in the newborn? I guess that's the answer.
This is one thing that we have been applying that for a few time, because we started like 5-6 years ago or 7, only for cystic fibrosis or fragile X, that are the most common genetic diseases. But then now with the new improvements of the genetic technology, we has increased up to 500, more than 500 recessive genetic diseases. So that means that we have reduced a lot the complications about that, and we offer to the recipient to do the matching, the genetic matching. So be sure that they don't share any disease.
Oh, between the recipient too and the donor. Now, this brings me to a question, Esther. You know, like all these genetic things come also with our, I didn't want even to say the word but with, I have to say it, with our race, you know, there is, for example, unfortunately, you know, but for example, you know that Hispanic Latinos have certain genes that are for certain disease, African Americans, Africans in general, or, you know, Ashkenaz Jews, Sephardic Jews. So that test that you also goes that according to the receptor race too?
Yeah, it's why we open that range of genetic diseases, because we start doing a European panel of genetic diseases, and then we have figured out that we had a lot of Jewish couples and Middle East also couples. So and the genetic, as you say, the genetic diseases are specific for these countries.
Yes.
So we had to widen the panel, and now we are testing more than 500. Yes.
That's why it's 500 and plus. So when it's like a specific couple, like, you know, a Jewish couple or Middle Eastern, or, you know, like Asians too, you know, Africans, so you go and expand that panel. I asked you a question because I received it yesterday via email, and I say, wow, this is from, you know, one of the ladies, I think, and she's planning to do a donor as a single mom. Because, you know, I wanted also that you point that the donor is, how is that handled, by the way, if it's a woman that wants to be just a single mom? So she needs egg donor. You also help her to find a sperm donor?
In that case, that woman is old, has more than 40 years old?
Yes.
Okay, so she will need an egg donor.
An egg donor, yes.
And then what we do is a double donation.
Double donation?
Yes, a sperm donor.
That's insane. It's amazing. Yes, because that's a question. It came also yesterday. She's a lady, I think she's from the group or from my Facebook page, one of the followers. She said she's 47 and she was looking into knowing she wants just to have, you know, baby, being a single mom. And so you do both.
We offer a double donation that is egg donor and a sperm. You know, cost of that is an egg donor plus the sperm bank. And also what we offer in that scenario for this girl, an embryo donation. What is an embryo?
Oh, yes.
Let me explain you. You know that when fertility couples come to our center and get pregnant,
yes,
imagine that you have 10 oocytes, 5 good blastocysts, we transfer 1, and then we freeze 4 remaining good ones. they get pregnant. So they come back for the one, and probably they get pregnant again.
Yes.
And they have 2 or 3 remaining good blastocysts on the lab, and they don't want any more babies.
Yes.
What happens with this? Every time that we have frozen embryos, we contact with the couple every single year, asking them what they want to do with the destiny of those embryos. They can donate to research, they can donate to another couple, they can keep freezing for themselves, or they can just terminate the conservation of the embryos.
Mm-hmm.
So if the patient decide to give to another couples, for example, these embryos, what we do is to test if the both members of the couple complies with the laws referring egg donation.
Okay.
We have to ensure that these donors complies all the regulation about donation. If these embryos comply with that, these embryos can be donated to another couple. Is what we call embryo donation, right? Mm-hmm. And the cost is less, and they are good embryos because we already know that they have implanted.
Yes, and they have babies from it. Yes.
They are good ones.
Also, it's like really like a little roots coming out. In the word donor has few ramifications. So the sperm, the female, and then the embryo. I think the embryo donation for a woman that wants to be a single mother would be the best option to do. And
she has to select from both donors. It's the same.
Yes, exactly. That's even better. Now, I have 2 questions. That is the first one. What is the cost
for an IVF cycle?
For the donor process.
The cost for an IVF with egg donation cycle varies because we have several programs. We can offer 6 mature eggs, 8 mature eggs, 10 mature eggs on exclusive donor.
Okay.
In our hands, the program with 8 mature eggs works very well because we guarantee on that program, we guarantee 2 blastocysts. That means 2 good embryos to transfer on day 5. Mm-hmm. That means 1 embryo for a fresh cycle, and then we freeze another one, and they will have a freeze embryo in case they don't get pregnant or they want to have a second one. So in that program, we guarantee, because we know that when they have to travel, they need some guarantees.
Yes.
A lot of expenses traveling, a lot of
emotional distress.
We give these guarantees. If we don't have blastocysts, we give we cancel the cycle. We reprogram with another donor for free without any cost for the recipient.
Oh wow!
And the average cost is 7,200 euros, more or less. 7,200, and includes the donor, all the tests from the donor, the selection of the donor, all the medical procedure for the donor, all the IVF laboratory part for the cycle, and all the medical expenses of the donor, and the treatment for the recipient.
Oh,
so
wow.
Include all, more or less, yeah.
And then, yes. That's an incredible package, and I think it's like you say, it's offering secure guarantees that kind of balance that emotional distress that come with the procedure itself. And then this makes me jump to the next question, Esther. What couples and women, that traveling demands that you need to at least have a visa, depends on the country that you live, your passport. What couples that they don't have a visa or passport or cannot travel for whatever reason can do if they want like abroad help in their fertility journey? How you can do that? Because I know that there is couples.
Yeah, we have worked a lot that part. One of the main targets we open the clinic is to offer treatments to all population. That's my main goal.
Okay.
To offer treatments to anyone. Looking at the world is very huge, and every single couple in their country has, some of them they have legal problems, some of them or legal limitations, some of them has economic limitations, some of them has cultural. Based on that, we have established a network of operations that permits any couple in the world to perform treatments. on that scenario, I could say that the first option for an American girl could be if they have the economics to afford an American donor to do all the procedure in America.
Yes.
It's completely logic. I mean, they don't have to travel, they don't have to worry if they can pay for that. But there are a lot of a huge percentage of Americans that cannot spend 40,000 euros, US dollars in a one whole IVF cycle.
In one, that is so right.
The second option is to travel to abroad, to Barcelona to ask for affordable egg donation. But also there are some percentage, as you say, of Americans that don't have visa, for example, don't have passport, or even they are working a lot of hours, 7 days per week, and they cannot
the companies, take yes.
And yes. This is happening. They cannot take any day off just to spend neither 2 or 3 days, because it's not much more that they need to do the treatment in Barcelona, only 3 days. But probably they cannot do that.
Yes.
What we have established is some relations with IVF centers to perform what we call egg donation in distance. That means that means they outsource the lab. I mean, the IVF center freeze the sperm. They can send the sperm to the sperm can be frozen on IVF or can be frozen in a sperm bank, whatever agency you
they choose. Yes.
Yeah, so we freeze the sperm. They send the sperm to Fertty, to Barcelona, to us. We organize all the shipment. We create the embryos there. We assign the donor. We create the embryos. We culture the embryos until day 5 to blastocyst stage, and then we freeze it. And after the freezing the embryos, we can send the embryos back to the IVF center in the United States. So there they can do the frozen embryo transfer. For the patient, they don't have to move from their country, from the city. They only have to wait because it takes some time for having all the paperwork that it's needed for that. It takes more time, but they don't have to travel, so it could be a good option for them. And obviously, as they are not doing all the procedure completely in the United States, the final cost is cheaper.
Totally, because for example, when you are explaining that, the person will say, oh my gosh, but the shipping, this is going to add to the cost. Completely true, what you just said. Here is really expensive. For example, let's look one little point. The fact that most embryo donation is handling by third-party agencies. So then is the third-party agent's cost, the cost of the egg donor, and then the IVF itself in your clinic, that is huge. And then with all of these, when you make the numbers of, okay, I send the sperm frozen to Fertty, they do the blastocyst, they send it back, you're going to compare and you're going to always think the price is way less. That's why today a lot of couples are choosing these procedures to do abroad. Egg donor, surrogacy, all of that. Finally, Esther, I want to ask you, how could be like, this is more from the point of view of questions from couples. In general, not only Americans. If you see, there is a lot of even South American couples that, because in South America it's also very, very expensive. And when they make numbers, they see that it's more affordable to go to Spain. They want to know, because here, you go to a clinic, and I did myself, and don't get me wrong, beautiful. I had my RE, but, every time I go to do my blood or something, there was sometimes different nurses, the mood is different. A lot of people now go also abroad because the clinics offer a specific team for their case. Fertty has that?
Yeah, I mean, when you are traveling, a lot of things, you have a lot of things on your mind that are not only the medical treatment. You have to worry about the coordination. You have to be worried about the mails. You have to the phone calls, the understanding what they are saying, organizing the trip, a lot of things. Yes. So one of our main concerns is to try to take out all this part for the couple, for the patient by itself, for the person that needs treatment. Why? Because they only need to get focused into to do what they have to do, to follow the medication and not to worry. The rest of us, we can manage ourselves. What we do is every time that we have a patient that consults with us, we offer a first medical consultation online for free, because for me it's very important that they establish this relationship with the doctor, this empathy. Because these procedures are very intimate.
Yes.
And you have to, and you need this relation with the doctor. You have to feel this empathy with the doctor and trust and confidence with the doctor. If you go to the doctor and you don't feel that, you will change to another one for sure.
Totally, that's how it is.
That when you travel 6,000 kilometers away. So we need to shorten that path. So it's for that we offer a medical consultation for free. I always recommend that they send us all complete records so we can really go into the clinical history and take advantage as much as possible of this medical consultation. And then when they decide to the treatment, what we do is to assign them one patient assistant and one medical assistant and the doctor. These three persons will start and will end the treatment with the patient. They will be the confidence person to this patient. We have a lot of ways of communication, and we are very quick answering, because I know really that when you are under, because I did myself, that when you are under this procedure, you have a lot of questions, a lot of things, and you need answers right away. You cannot wait.
You can't.
We try to offer that as much as possible. You have to consider that we have 8 or 9 different, from 6 to 9 different time schedule between
hours,
United States, so we have to sleep. But considering that, we try to answer as quick as possible, because we really know that there is a lot of questions. So it's why also we offer them fertility coaching with you also, because it's very important. Then they reduce the stress, because I know that all is connected. If they come to the best state of physically and mentally status, we can have success. But we need balance.
Totally.
It's not only medical. We need to get the balance. And we are working very hard with Fertty to give them that support based on their needs.
Yes, that was the last question I wanted, because today clinics are really kind of starting to see that part that you mentioned, and I love that. I wanted to ask it to you. Of course, we partner. I am working with you guys as the fertility coach in the emotional part, but I wanted them to hear it from you. Yes, everyone, Fertty has that incredible system of offering a team from the beginning to end only for you. And even with the difference of hours, they are so fast to answer. I'm here today in New York, Esther is in Barcelona, and we always coordinate something in such a way that the communication is great. So I myself can tell you that the good thing about you having done IVF is that you yourself could see everything. So your answers were on your own hands.
That's true. I've been in both sides.
Yes.
But I could say that being in both sides, I'm not a patient by yours, because I have a lot of information on my mind. So I can.
It can also stress you out because you know too much. It's so true.
Yeah, but I'm very confident with my team, so I was relaxed when I did my IVF.
Of course.
I was completely relaxed and say, whatever, I trust you.
Yes, and I think that the Fertty offers that concept of trust. Incredible. We had the amazing pleasure to meet each other in person, and we had such a good connection from the first time, and that's why I feel very honored to be partnering with you, Esther. So everyone, listen to this. This webinar is gonna be here in our group. Always, I'm going to put it for the next 2 weeks as an announcement. You can come. If you didn't ask questions today, please do not hesitate to comment questions and ask here below the Zoom webinar here. You can tag me or can tag Esther. Both of us are members of the group, so when we see the notification in our Facebook, Esther will answer the questions. We are working on more webinars all together with Fertty, and I'm gonna publish it in Facebook. I will send also the link to Esther so she can put it in her social media. And any questions you have, please direct it to us. If you feel that you want a little bit more private, as I said, Esther is a member. You can just click DM her or DM me, send your email, and we will be able to answer you the questions. Esther, it was amazing to have you. We have another webinar together in a few months. And if there is,
it was a pleasure.
yes, I know. And if there is any last message, any last thing that you want to say before we say today goodbye to our audience, please feel free to do so.
I only want to say that one of the main concerns always is the fear of traveling abroad. I could say that actually there is no barriers. The only barriers that we have are cultural and religious and few barriers. Linguistic we can manage, and flights we can manage every single day. And we are very focused on trying to put them down or as much as possible, and do the treatment as we are close. Next slide.
That is the most important thing, as you said, cultural, religious, politics, that differences in the end come to nothing when it comes to reach our dream of being parents. So true.
We have the same dream at the end.
We all have, that is so true. That is so true. Okay, Esther, again, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Remember, you can post questions, you can do comments or send us DM. We're going to be in touch. And thank you so much for being here with us. Everyone, goodbye.
Bye.